Now we are going to be looking back over the year in sport, and with me to do that in studio is our sports editor Derrick Lynch, and on the line we're joined by our GA commentator Syl O'Connor as well. Very good morning.
Morning.
Thanks for being with us. Derrick, I suppose we want to do all matters hurling related. Maybe it's the best place to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, we can, yeah, certainly. Just wondering, no box of roses in studio? We generally have an old box of celebrations for this. Cutbacks, is it?
I might have to commandeer one from the kitchen if I see it going.
Will you stop? It's where we're stuck from. Yeah, I suppose, look, it is the time of year we kind of take stock and look back, and I suppose often you have a very different perspective on things, because when you're in the middle of something, it's very hard, as they say, to see the wood from the trees. And certainly from an inter-county hurling perspective, I think that's very, very apt this year, and particularly in recent days, talking to Conor Cleary, and I know you had Brian in studio here on Thursday, and you kind of forget a little bit in the haze of the year as to the circumstances, maybe as to why things panned out the way that they did. And they were both, I have to say, both Conor and Brian, very keen to not play down, but not kind of use excuses in terms of why the year played out the way it did. But like, when you think about the injuries, the small margins, the little bits and pieces that just didn't go Clare's way.
Sure, we even had one in earlier on, and it says something. Kevin in Clarecastle talking about his highlight of the year was Aaron Shanner winning that ball in the free that would have led to Clare going in front in the 7th minute of the game against Cork on the Easter Sunday. And I did put that to Brian, that the fine margins, Cork get that opportunity to level it up in a game where you thought they were going to win by about 20 points. Sliding doors moments.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose that's what I mean, that in the weeks that followed after Clare's championship exit, there was all sorts of discourse and disappointments and all the rest of it. But then when you look back and you think of, like, Dermot Ryan affected by injury, Shane O'Donnell affected by injury, Tony Kelly affected by injury, Conor Cleary affected by injury, that's the kind of spine of your team, really. And to be down those guys in those big games was huge, I suppose. And again, you look at the Tip game, such fine margins there. Shane O'Donnell, that roar when he came back onto the field that day was incredible. And the way the game panned out then after, just such slim margins, and what Tip went on to do after. So I think there's so many reasons for a positive outlook to 26 for the Clare Hurlers, because a lot of their big name guys that didn't maybe get to feature as much as they would have liked last year are coming into it fresh and hungry. And the upshot of that is the younger fellas that got their chance and got blooded in senior championship are coming in with a great deal of experience from that under their belts. You married them two together, and that's huge. And just while we're on the subject of marrying, and we've mentioned Conor Cleary, just to give a mention to himself and Louise, who tied the knot over the weekend.
Segue King.
We're told it was a fantastic fantastic night in the Armada, so just to wish the both of them the very best of luck in the future, as long as that came to the mind.
Your invite get lost in the post?
Not at all. No. Just not on this occasion. Wasn't available. But no, just congratulations to the two of them, and best wishes for the future.
Brilliant. Let's bring Syl in. Syl, what's your perspective on how the senior hurlers, they're 2025? I'm sure you heard my chat with Brian, and do you agree with Derrick? It can be fine margins and injuries coming at the wrong time and so on that just conspire against you.
Absolutely. Ellen, I have the roses here just in case anybody's looking for them.
I was wondering.
Oh, that's brilliant. We'll all drive to 6 Mile Bridge after the show and get a few can you keep the strawberry ones for me?
No, I'm moving around, so you won't be able to catch me. I suppose when you think of 2025, I suppose the best days to start is to go back 12 months. Because 12 months ago, we were All-Ireland hurling champions going into 2025. And it doesn't come much higher than that, certainly in the hurling world. What transpired after that, in one way, is, you've hit the nail in the head. The injuries were crippling. Now, everybody might think that when you have an injury, sure, there's been no hassle, you've a subbed in to come on. It's not quite like that at all. It's just a sequence of play. It's just moves and play and things like that change the landscape a little bit along the way. Now you think back to the Cork game. The Cork game, as you said, I know we were 10 or 12 points down, but if you go deep into injury time on that particular day, and we all know what happens 9 times out of 10 in that situation, that if the opposition, and in this case it was clear because they were leading by a point, if the opposition got the ball, well then most likely the referee would blow. On that particular day, on that particular puck out, it was David McInerney who caught the ball. So if David had got away well, then we had Cork defeated. We all know what happened after that. Cork were fouled, 3-in game, ended up in a draw. You then move on to the Clare Tip game, and even Tipperary, to their credit, and they had a fantastic year. They still, every single time they talk about winning the All-Ireland, they refer back to Cusack Park on the day they played Clare. It was their biggest test, even with all those injuries, and that's the one they look back on. But if I had to take one thing from the hurling world of 2025, was on the 25th of May this year, when Clare headed into the Gaelic grounds in Limerick, they were out of the championship. It was their final game as All-Ireland hurling champions. It was their final game. They were out of the competition. They were out of the Munster Championship. And to be very honest about it, on that particular day, you would be wondering, leading up to it, you know, it was a nothing game from a Clare point of view. Limerick were already in the Munster final. Would anybody turn up? And it was one of the most amazing days. It really, really showed the real support that's within Clare. And I'm talking about across the county of Clare. That showed support on that particular day. It was a fantastic atmosphere. And then for the team themselves, they were like a team that played for the supporters on that particular day. It's always the other way around, supporters shouting on the team. I just thought on that day, the team played for the supporters. It was a Ryan Taylor double goal that day. It was victory for Clare that day by 5 points. It was just a moment that stood out to me from the hurling world of 2025.
And Derrick, just bring you back in, and I was going to say I don't want to draw correlations between two events, but I am going to. You know, Brian popped into us for a chat to look back on the year that was and the year that was coming at the end of 2023. We all know what happened the following year. I had Brian on last week to talk about the year that was and the year that could be in 2026. So, see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I hope you're right. I hope
basically give Morning Focus credit if Clare win the Clare win the All Ireland.
Yeah, just keep talking to us. That'll go.
Yeah.
But you know what? As well as everything that Syl has outlined, and I was kind of, you know, I saw it in Deirdre Murphy's report, and fair play to her for saying it, about the, you know, how much an All-Ireland celebration takes out of a team. And in fairness to them lads, they brought that cup to the four corners of the county and beyond.
And like, the world.
It made its way to the Mulla Community Sports Field, to the Clonbunny Cool Camp, right? So that doesn't happen all that often. So what I mean is there was nobody left wanting to feel the weight of Liam McCarthy. And that took a big effort. Again, I'm not using this as an excuse in any way, shape or form, but that does take effort. It takes distraction. I thought it was actually striking to hear Brian saying here on Thursday that he was talking about the amount of work that they've got done at this point this year as opposed to last year. Now he said it wasn't that we didn't have it done last year, but just there was more distractions, and I thought that was really striking, that he kind of felt that, you know what, we're a little bit more ready for it now this year maybe than perhaps we had been at this time last year. So that's another thing. And when you think about it, right, outside of those, you know, the great Limerick teams and those who got used to handling that, when you have a team that win their first All-Ireland after a while, it's very difficult to go and defend it the year after because of all that. And of course Clare them were coming in off the back of all those injuries, a kind of a disappointing enough league campaign that saw them relegated as well. So when it came to championship, there was a couple of gates to jump that, as we said, there was just, you know, centimetres. I go back to that great Al Pacino speech in Any Given Sunday, the game of inches. That's all it was really. So again, I really feel that those people that have got out and bought their season tickets for 2026 for Clare, I really think you're going to be using that to get a seat above in Jones's Road, be it for an All-Ireland semi-final or final. You're smiling there, but I really feel that this year, Alan. I just get the sense that this is a Clare team that are really, really ready, and I think we're in for some journey. I think Division 1B, in hindsight, when we speak and sit down here in 12 months' time, I think that Division 1B campaign is going to be another blessing in disguise, because you're going to see more opportunity for lads to play difficult games off Broadway. In a lot of ways, it won't get the same. We'll cover every game, obviously, but from a national sense, the narrative will be Division 1A and the, you know, winning of the league and all the rest of it. Whereas Clare can go to Antrim, they can go to Carlow, they can go to Kildare, right? Not highlights of the year, but they will be character-defining games, I feel, for this young group. That by the time Waterford come here to Ennis for that first game of the Munster Championship, it'll be rocking. And
on that point with the league, Syl, it was something I did put to Brian last Thursday, that, as Derrick says, it's an opportunity to try out players and, you know, tactical tweaks or whatever Brian and his management team want to do off Broadway, but also the likes of Dublin coming to Ennis and going up to Antrim to play at team management Dave Fitzgerald and going to Kildare, a lot of teams who look at Clare, as Brian said, we're there to be shot at. So as I put it to him, there won't be any kind of room for complacency because these teams want to take Clare as a scalp.
Well, there's two things about that. Alan, about the league. And I'll just say one thing that I just to refer back to just one little thing. A lot of people during the year kept asking the question at different venues, what's wrong with Clare this year, last 2025. And as I was making the point, and Derrick referred to it there, and rightly so, I used to always say to him, while county teams were training in November and December and January, Clare was celebrating. And rightly so, because they had a fantastic time. But the answer to your question is the league will work in both ways. First and foremost, the most important thing about the league is that a lot of players will get an opportunity to make a mark, to get their place in that 26 on Championship Day, which is a good thing. That's a huge thing for those players as well. Number two, there is no fear of standards dropping. You see, at this particular stage, both on the field and off the field, everybody knows where you need to be going into the last week in March and the first week in April for the championship matches coming up. Everybody knows exactly where they need to be, fitness-wise, mentality-wise, preparation-wise. They know all that. And the build-up to that will start on the 1st of February, and it's started well before now. They're at that at the moment. So it's not where they are right now. It's where they need to be at the end of March, April, and they know exactly where they need to be.
Okay, we're also joined by our hurling analyst, Tommy Guilfoyle. Tommy, good morning to you.
Good morning, Alan. Happy Christmas to you and all in Corofin.
Same to yourself. We've just been chatting there with Derrick and Syl about the year for the Clare Senior Hurlers. What's your own perspective on how it went and what we can expect from 2026?
Yeah, look at, I suppose, after the highs of winning the All-Ireland the previous year, expectations would have been high, and the management and all that would have, prepared to retain their title. But sometimes lady luck doesn't shine on you, and, the amount of injuries to key players, coming into that Munster Championship, had a real effect on it. Now, look at, there was games that we could have maybe got more out of, could have won, but overall, I think, it was a Munster Championship campaign that they won't look back on with any great fondness. But, we know what these players are made out of. I suppose the heads are down now already and, preparing for 2026. And look, it kicks off next week, the 3rd of January, with a Munster League game. So, I suppose overall disappointing, not making excuses, just offering some reasons. The injuries and sicknesses, I think, took its toll.
Yeah. Okay. Derrick, maybe do we want to move on to Éire and the first Hamilton 35 years, or anything else to say?
You're the boss. You're the boss, Alan. You're guiding this ship here now this morning.
Well,
so
let's steer that ship towards club matters then, because it was a huge year for Éire doing the double. Obviously, we'll talk about the other half of that a little later on. But getting their hands on Canon Hamilton for the first time since 1990, incredible scenes.
Yeah, massive for them, absolutely huge. And I suppose it's a victory that the county town will say that was a long time in the making, and they'll definitely hope there won't be as long in the making again. And they won a very, very tough championship, in fairness. I know the county final, when you look back at it, was it a classic game? No. Will Éire care? Not a jot. That's the reality of it. I mean, there was two teams on that day, themselves and Clooney Quinn, both looking to end famines. Clooney Quinn's was huge altogether. Éire, in the context of being in the county town, I suppose, in the numbers that they could have access to, equally so as well. So it was just, it felt like a nervy kind of a county final that never really sparked. I suppose David Reedy's third quarter performance as captain probably kicked on Éire on a day that they just needed to grind out the victory. But I think you go back to the game against Kilmaley on the evening that the rain came and drowned myself and Tommy and everyone else in the commentary box as well. I was dreading extra time that day, because I think even our technician here, Mark Levin, would have been looking for new gear the following day. It would have got wrecked. But I thought that on that day that they just stuck the head down, and you kind of saw a resilience and a willingness to go down to their bootstraps that we maybe hadn't seen in other Éire teams, and also the depth they had to come off the bench. I think Jerry O'Connor had been talking about that since the night they won the Division 2 league out in Rowan, about the league campaign being used to build a squad, and ultimately when it came to championship, I suppose that bore fruit.
What is your own take, Tommy, on Éire winning the Canon Hamilton?
Yeah, they would have been my pick from very early on. I just thought that, with the introduction of the new players last season, they would have had that year behind them. And again, I thought, going back in, was this going to be the last hurrah for some of the great stalwarts that have been there? A lot of people thought they had missed their chance or were definitely in transition. But I think, went through the championship, unbeaten, playing very impressively. And I suppose, sometimes, youth can add an injection of enthusiasm and real, hunger and desire. And I think that was the difference. And let's remember that, a lot of those old players wouldn't have been, successful at underage. So, it's a credit and to their academy system, bringing those players through. Sometimes, people think, you have to be winning 16s and minors and 20s. Well, Rogue have proved you don't. I think it's gradual progress. They have a big pick. Look at they have that, but it's utilising them, and I think they got their just rewards this year. And again, won't be too keen to give it up, but as we know, it's always harder to go back and retain your title. You might think that you've done enough or doing enough, but when it comes to the crunch, is that hunger and desire there? We'll just have to wait and see. But a big monkey off the back for a Rogue, and the future is bright.
Yeah, and Syl, I suppose, as Tommy says, to see if the hunger and desire is there, and because of course it formed part of a double, and we'll get to the football later on. But they're more used to winning Jack Daly than they are the Canon Hamilton. So do you think there will be that sense of hunger in 2026 as there was in 2025, or do you think they kind of might be sated a little bit by that, because it was they wanted to end that 3.5 decade famine? They've done it, and perhaps it might be difficult to go to the well again so soon afterwards.
I think one of the big things, as everybody will tell you, Alan, one of the big things in sport is the mentality in which you have going into a competition. Now, every single year, there's a huge emphasis on the opening round of the Senior Hurling Championship. And the reason for that is that there's a general feeling that if you can win the first round of the Hurling Championship, well, then you're safe enough, or reasonably safe, from a relegation battle. So that will set up every team for the opening round of the championship. The second round of the championship then brings on a different mentality, because sometimes you have to win to stay out of there, and other times, if you can win, you've nearly one leg in the quarter-final. So from an Éire point of view, they were very impressive in the opening parts of this championship. And then, of course, the most famous part of all is when you get to the knockout stage of a championship, and really at that particular stage, they survived the ferocious battle against Kilmaley in that semi-final. That was a huge, because Kilmaley, in fairness to them, were one of the top 3 teams in the hurling championship for me in 2025. And of course, obviously then, Clooney Quinn being the other. Now, when they got to the final, Clooney Quinn, the fantastic decoration in the place, and I saw him at it a couple of times going through there, and they were all set for this, but it was a huge occasion as well. Now, the red hot favourites to win that are the Rogue. That's number 1 on paper. Number 2, in their own mindset, they knew well, and everybody knows that if you get to the final this year, there's absolutely zero guarantee you'll get back there again for quite a while. They looked at this as a huge opportunity, and they took it. And I think the big thing that they got into their game this year, and in fairness to Jerry O'Connor and his backroom team, they brought a certain amount of steel into their game this year that was probably ever so slightly lacking. And they finally got the belief that they could win the Canon back again. And as I said, and that's exactly what they did on a tough day. Nobody cares in Éire about the standard of the final. They're going celebrating the double in a few weeks' time. And more look done. They were fantastic this year and deserving county champions.
Yeah, that is for sure. And Derrick, we had a sporting highlight from a listener earlier on, and their highlight was Éire Kilnamona winning the Senior Camogie Championship after a gap of 5 years, and stopping 3 in a row chasing through Clonlara, and a big achievement for them, particularly after the disappointment of the previous year's defeat to the same opposition.
Oh, absolutely. And again, I was at their semi-final over against Scariff Ogonnelloe in Killanena on that Sunday morning, and I thought they were really, really good. Very, very solid performance. And for them, that's a county title hard earned. Beating Scariff Ogonnelloe, beating True Clonlarry, you're talking about Munster champions of recent years there. And again, they go into every championship with the expectation, because they've such good players, but they've got a couple of really, really key players back, the likes of Teresa O'Keefe and those this year, that just added a little bit more to them. But special mention, I think, and it's very hard in a team sport to pick out an individual. We do it often in hurling, I suppose, with the likes of Tony and Shane. But for Clare Senior, she's a player that I think is just phenomenal, and it has been for a long, long time. She's given some service to club and county, rewarded this year with her nomination for an All-Star because of Clare's journey to the All-Ireland quarter-final, which was a huge, huge sporting story at the time as well. I suppose in an inter-county sense, it was the story of the summer, a first ever quarter-final in Croke Park, and a really good performance against a very good Waterford team on that day as well. Like Anya Loughlin's goal at the hill end in that first half really lit the place up. Brilliant finish on the swivel. And I think a great foundation laid with John Carmody handing the reins over then to Eugene Foodie for the coming season. So their league gets underway on, I think, the weekend of Valentine's Day, actually. And then they kick on from there. And of course, we got news last week of these new rules that are being trialled for Camogie. So it's an exciting time for them. So on the county scene, that journey to the quarter-final, a fantastic way to end the year, I suppose, in a lot of ways. And then for Éire Kilnamona, they'll be disappointed with the Munster Championship game out in Inaghdon, a rotten day against Newcastle West, but certainly from a county championship perspective, to get the McMahon Cup back, they'll be thrilled.
Yeah, no doubt they will be, and well done to them. Let's turn to matters of the big ball, and Derrick, our senior footballers, the year for them, I would say, despite not getting promoted, good campaign in Division 3 of the National Football League, in that it was fine margins, finished level on 10 points with Kildare and Offaly, who were promoted, beaten in the Munster final, which they got to again, 3 Munster finals in a row, not to be sniffed at, lost to Kerry. Then in the All-Ireland series in Group 3, unfortunately 0 from 3, as our friends across the water would say. 3 defeats to Monaghan down in Louth, although it was always going to be difficult. 2 big northern sides and the new Leinster champions. Peter Keane gone after one season, following Mark Fitzgerald, who also left after one season. So Clare football badly needed stability. They look to have that now, and also, this is nothing against outside managers coming in, but with a big Clare presence in Paul Madden, who you think would really relish the role and will look to take this team on.
Yeah, I suppose if you look back on 2025, I was just thinking about it there, a positively frustrating mixed bag, I think is fair to say. It
had everything in it, yeah.
It really did, from the point of view that, like, we went up to Antrim that first day in the league, and I'm just about thawed out from it, and it was just...
Is that where promotion was missed out on the opening day?
It kind of was, because it was just such a freakish day. There was a disappointing performance against Sligo, there was a brilliant performance against Lynch, which those two kind of counterbalanced each other insofar as you were supposed to win one and not the other. And when you think about it, then the last day here against Offaly winning, and then you look at it,
beat Offaly and Kildare, the two teams got promoted.
That's where the positively frustrating mixed bag comes into it. That if these three-way ties, and I'm not going to ask Syl to go through it now because it's a storied one, but if the way of solving that in the little mini league between those three teams had been applied here, Clare would have been promoted in first place by virtue of beating the two of them.
Yeah, best
but instead it was down to straight score difference, which is an anomaly between league and championship. So you talk about fine margins, that's fingernail stuff. And then in the championship, got to the Munster final, a disappointing result down in Killarney, but then again another disappointing performance against Down. Really good in defeat above Clonus against Monaghan, and against Louth that day in Portlaoise, from memory, was Portlaoise, wasn't it? That again, you were kind of coming off the field going, that was a really good showing. We've left it all out there. And it felt like, and we've said this before, one, Peter Keane started late because of Mark Fitzgerald's departure. This was the year of the new rules. There was no McGrath Cup in which to kind of run through them and get used to them. So, not only were you starting from a standing start, you were kind of 2 steps off the start line, so it felt to me anyway, those Monaghan and Louth performances, it was like, we're clicking. We're starting to motor a little bit, and then Peter goes, and it's fantastic that Paul Madden is in. I was just so delighted when that news came out, because number one, you're guaranteed the longevity with Paul. 3 years will be 3 years. Like, he knows the game inside out. He's highly respected. He's well known.
Passion for the role.
I mean, this man is so detailed, Alan, that the Clare Senior Footballers now have an official coffee partner in the well at Bio, right? So if you're a Clare Senior Footballer now and you want to meet up and have a coffee, you can go to Éire and Sharon at Well and have a coffee.
So this team will literally be full of beans.
And again, Jesus, it's cat. But what I mean is, it's the small little details that Paul, because of his professional experience, will bring. A Clare footballer now will want for nothing in that sense, and I just think there's such a positive frame to build on. Yes, it's going to be difficult this year because of obviously meeting Kerry in a Munster semi-final, albeit it'll be here at home, but target number one, absolutely number one, will be down in Newry on the 24th of January at 6 o'clock in Park Isler. That will be the be-all and end-all for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think Derrick summed it up really well there. A frustratingly pleasing year, or a pleasingly frustrating year, whatever way you want to look at it. But whilst it ended in disappointment going out of the All-Ireland series and the manager going not long after, what an appointment, and so much to look forward to in 2026.
It's difficult enough to keep up with you this morning now, between positively frustrating and full of beans in if you drink coffee.
We're getting an official, myself and Derrick are working on our official coffee partner.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I'm absolutely delighted that Paul has come on board. I think it's the lift that he brought with him when the announcement was made, I think was absolutely fantastic, because we had a bit of drama now for the last 2 years with managers coming and going, and it's brilliant to see that has now been lifted, and hope for the best for the future. Promotion from Division 3, so near as the saying goes, but yet so far at the end of the day. We all know the results at this particular stage. We all know where we ended up, and as Derrick said, if there was a three-way that happens in Championship, now Derrick, don't start me on that now at this time of the morning. And the other thing about it then was, the one day stands out to me. One day stands out, and that was the day when Clare played Sligo in Markovics Park. That was a real day and a real opportunity. Now, the best I won on the day, but it was just one of those days that I think Clare were trying their very, very best, almost pulled something out of the fire on that day. It didn't happen. And from there on, it was all Championship. Look, we know what happened in Killarney. We've seen it over and over and over. No point in dwelling on that. Great performances in the group stages, which I actually enjoy, in the knockout stages of the Championship. But again, very, very tough opposition. But overall, something great for Clare to build on in 2026. And I certainly hope that they will grasp it, because everything you could possibly want in place right now is there. And I think if you just mention one thing, if you're on the football subject, there's one thing. I wasn't there, but I saw it. Derrick was there. With one of the best goals you'll see from any player in any county. We saw it in Simple Stadium, I think, there during with Conor Burke from KIB. Something like that, a bit of magic. That's one of the things that stands out for me. But overall, for Clare going forward, madly looking forward to 2026.
Yeah, lots to look forward to. Derrick, not much time left to us. I suppose just to mention Éire obviously doing the double. They won Jack Daly, but guess what's new there? In terms of the women, we were talking about the Camogie earlier on. I have to give a nod to Clare winning the All-Ireland Under-18 Ladies Final against Sligo, which was a big achievement for them, and I know they marked that and giving out the medals on their big night. And Ennis Ladies Rugby Club embarking on their maiden AIL campaign. So lots of positives in various women's sports in the county too. Yeah,
and you talk about success breeding success. Like that day above in Beacon for the All-Ireland final, the throw-in was actually delayed because of the crowd of people that were coming into it. So it just goes to show you that if you build it, they will come approach. And from a Clare Ladies football point of view, fantastic performance on the day against Sligo. Aoibhinn Ryan, as she was doing all year, scoring a cracking goal. Well managed team by Barry Donnelly and all his backroom team. They were fantastic right throughout the season, winning the Munster title as well. And a lot of those have now graduated onto the intermediate panel with Graham Shine and his crew there. So they had a disappointing year, I think it's fair to say, but a difficult year. You know, a kind of a slow enough exit from the Championship that day when they played Tyrone. You know, I think they'll be looking to build again. It's a title that they've almost got their hands on before, and hopefully in the years to come that they will. But again, I think the likes of Aisling Crowe and Aisling Kelly and these players coming through from that minor squad, I think they will bolster brilliantly. And yeah, as you say, the Ennis women's rugby team having a fantastic first half to the season. They're mid-table after their opening games.
But that's a great foundation to move ahead.
Yeah, because I mean, relegation's off the table for them now. They're looking really in the new year at hopefully a shot at a playoff spot. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But I mean, that result against Old Belvedere last weekend, or the weekend before, whenever it was, will really kind of gear them up now for the new season coming through. So yeah, lots and lots of positivity to build on.
Okay, brilliant stuff. Gents, Derrick, Syl and earlier on Tommy, thank you very much to all of you for being with me today and across the year in sport, and hope you have a great Christmas, and we'll again be chatting to you in the new year, hopefully a positive one for Clare in all codes of sport.